everyone, and welcome to my kitchen. Today, I'm going to show you how to make the best coffee cake in the whole wide world. In fact, this coffee cake recipe comes from King Arthur Flour, and it's their 2023 recipe of the year. I mean, you have me when it's coffee cake. I love coffee cake. My mother used to make it all the time, and it really is just one of those things I love. So I'm gonna look at the recipe here, and we're gonna go through it. It's kind of a long recipe. I'll share it with you online, but we're gonna start out first here. We're gonna make all the toppings. So I'm gonna start with 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. So this is topping, filling. This is the filling. So we've got 1/3 cup of sugar, granulated sugar. Now what we're gonna do is you need Vietnamese or Saigon cinnamon is what they recommend. It's 2 teaspoons here in this filling. If you're using a different type of cinnamon, it's not gonna be as strong a punch of cinnamon. Let's say if you get a Saigon or a Vietnamese type of cinnamon. So go ahead and bump up that to 3 teaspoons if you don't use this. And this is just plain old cinnamon, and they don't tell you where it comes from. So it could be a blend of a lot of things. So I would, if you want to make just a super delicious coffee cake, go with the Saigon or Vietnamese cinnamon. And then you're going to add 2 tablespoons, this is the craziest part, of cocoa powder. Unsweetened, Dutch processed cocoa powder. 2 tablespoons. I'm going to take this with a fork and I'm just going to mix it together. Now our next one we're gonna do, this is the topping, which is like the crumble part. So I've got 1 cup of all-purpose flour right here. I'm gonna put 6 tablespoons of granulated sugar, and then I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar. Here we go with the powdered sugar. So we're gonna put 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar. 1, 2. Now I usually use brown sugar, so I'm really interested when I did this how yummy it was. And then what we're gonna use is we're gonna put a little pinch of salt, because when we have this much sugar, you wanna have a little bit of salt to offset it. A pinch of salt and 6 tablespoons of room temperature butter. That was another thing that I thought was very interesting, because usually when I'm making something like this, I always use butter that is cold. So that was really interesting in their recipe that they said to use room temperature butter. And what I'm doing is I'm just cutting it into lumps to make it easier to mix in there. And then I'm gonna add in a tablespoon of vanilla extract, or you can use vanilla paste. I'm gonna use vanilla paste. I just love the flavor of vanilla paste. So I've got 1 tablespoon of vanilla paste. I'm gonna use my finger because I don't want to let any of it go to waste. Just like that. We're gonna put the lid on and we're gonna give it a buzz. Here we go. So come back in a minute. We're going to make actually the cake part of this delicious coffee cake, assemble it and pop it in the oven. I can't wait to share with you this delicious coffee cake recipe. So guys, we're gonna do part 2 of the King Arthur recipe of the year, which is a coffee cake. So this is gonna start a little different than our normal kind of cake making. So basically we're doing a reverse method. We're gonna start with our dry ingredients first, and then we're gonna add in our wet stuff. It's totally crazy, but it works for this recipe. So I've got 2 cups of all-purpose flour here in our bowl. I've got 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. I've got a teaspoon of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and some salt, because we're gonna want to kind of offset all of that super sweetness. And then what we're gonna do, let me just put this in here quickly. And so we're just gonna beat this around and mix all our dry ingredients together. So now follow me, guys. So now what we're gonna do is I've got 1 stick of unsalted butter. Let's see if I can do this. Just like that. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna beat this together until little crumbles come together, almost like you're making a topping of some sort. So let's do this. Okay, so we've got lots of little butter and flour crumbles. Now we're gonna add in the wet ingredients. This is totally different than you usually make a cake. So I've got 2 large eggs and some vanilla paste. We're gonna mix that in. Okay, we don't want to leave all the vanilla paste at the bottom because we're going to want all that yummy flavor. So use your spatula and mix that in. So it's going to get more and more crumbly now as we're adding in the eggs. Okay, so now we've got big crumbles. Check out the big crumbles. Now we're going to add our buttermilk. Now the recipe calls for 1 cup of buttermilk or Greek yogurt. You can use whichever, but what they're looking for is this going to add a ton of moisture. So here we go. We're going to add in all of the liquid now, and now we're going to just continue mixing this until there is no lumps. So check back in a second and I'll show you what we're gonna do next. Now it's time to assemble our coffee cake. So this is really simple. You're gonna take an 8x8 or 9x9 square baking pan. I like to use a silicone one. And when you're using silicone, you wanna make sure and put it on a baking sheet so it has some support there. So here is our batter. So I'm gonna put in half of our batter. So what we're gonna do, here it is. It's a real dark, sugary filling. So we're gonna put that in there. Now we're gonna put the rest of the batter in there on top. And so in this time, because this is kind of a floury kind of dust, it's gonna be hard to spread it. So what I do is I kind of put it all over it, the top of it, to make it easier to move around. Look at all this delicious, buttery, crumbly topping with our good, delicious Vietnamese cinnamon. Well, everyone, the King Arthur coffee cake is done. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I am so excited to try this. And let me show it to you. Look at that. Oh, I'm so excited. And now I see why this was the recipe of the year.